Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Today's episode sponsored by the Horner Cycling Foundation, where our Molly is getting our cyclocross races all ready to go for early September. We're going to start just after the first week of September, and we have 4 races set up once a week here at the Bend Athletic Club in Bend, Oregon. So if you guys can, come out, view, participate. Maybe give an email sent out there to Molly, see if she needs any helpers, somehow help out Molly setting up the course, or of course just keeping everyone safe on the course. Or if you'd like any kind of donations, that'd be fantastic if you guys can send donations in to Molly to help put on all the races. We do these races so all the kids here in Bend, Oregon and Central Oregon, that these kids can stay focused and have something to look forward to each week. We just got done doing the Criterium series, and of course we had the Bend Downtown Criterium. So next up in line are the cyclocross races starting just after the first week of September. Hopefully you guys can help out in some way or another. Now, today's video, what would I like to talk about? I want to go back into the Tour de France when we start talking about the first page riders, the 6 first page riders, and especially the 4 first page riders when you're talking Tadej, Primoz Roglic, Jonas Vingegaard, and Remco Evenepoel. When we look at the 25 Tour de France, I've already done videos on Beyond the Coverage with Tadej Pogacar and how he rode, in with Jonas Vingegaard and Viz Melissa Bike, how they rode after the 25 Tour de France. But when we really look at that Tour de France, and you see Tadej Pogacar winning his 4th yellow jersey at the 25th edition, 2025 edition, we know that Tadej Pogacar, of course, was really good. But really the problems begin when we start looking at the next 3. Jonas was okay, and I covered that when he said he was good, but it was the bad days that cost him, and I said it was the not especially good days that really cost him the Tour de France, because you can have some bad days, but if you have exceptionally good days, you can make up for an off bad day. But with that in mind, if we take Jonas and not having exceptionally good days, we know that he didn't perform like we have seen in years past, because he is a 2-time Tour de France champion when we're looking at 22 and 23 edition of the Tour de France. So we know in those years he had exceptional good days, especially when we're talking about that stage 16 2023 individual time trial. It was marvelous, exceptional day. So that was the biggest problem for Jonas Vingegaard. But when we look at Primoz Roglic, and we do something short talking about Primoz Roglic here, well, he crashed at the Giro 4 times. So that explains easily why Primoz Roglic was underperforming at the 25 Tour de France. When you're trying to recover from the crash, you just cannot get up to the best level in the world. When we're talking about July at the European Peloton, it's hard to bring that form in. So 4 top GC guys coming in. Pogi's number 1. Jonas is underperforming and not having exceptionally good days, plus the first individual time trial on stage 5, where he lost way over a minute to Tadej Pogacar. Then we start going into, of course, Oudacom stage 12. Again, lost massive time to Tadej Pogacar, talking over 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 10 seconds, if I remember correctly. But when we go into Primoz, same scenario as I told you. He crashed 4 times, just can't get the level up. So now you start talking about, instead of having 4 top GC guys to battle against each other at the 25 Tour de France, you're only left with Tadej Pogacar and 1 Remco Evenepoel. Now, that's the rider I want to discuss up here on Beyond the Coverage, because we look at Remco Evenepoel throughout the start of the season. I told you guys after Flèche-Wallonne, when it was raining and miserable and he blew up that day, and then went into Liège-Bastogne-Liège and spectacularly blew up at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. That day, I told you guys on the video, Beyond the Coverage in Butterfly Effect, that Remco Evenepoel had to be exceptionally cautious of what was causing that problem. Now, he kept racing after Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and that's probably the beginning to the problem of the Tour de France. When you look at Liège-Bastogne-Liège and you have that spectacular explosion that Remco Evenepoel had on that day, and then he decided to go do Romandy, I believe that is the problem that we saw later that appears at Dauphiné and later that appears at the Tour de France. Now we go into stage 14, the last stage of the 25 Tour de France that Remco Evenepoel dropped out on. We see the pictures. He's climbing in the front seat of the passenger side of the team car there after he handed the bottle to the kid on the side. And once we see him disappear, then we start seeing some Instagram posts where he talks about, wow, I just didn't have anything. I can't pinpoint what the problem was. The problem was Liège-Bastogne-Liège, not that race. But whatever brought in that problem of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, once you blew up spectacularly like you did at Liège-Bastogne-Liège, you needed to reset. Now, a lot of people say, well, he already had a lot of time off after the crash in December. But whatever's going deeply wrong with the body at Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and it started at Flèche-Wallonne, but we saw it vividly saw it at Liège-Bastogne-Liège when he blew up. That moment was the time when he needed to take 2 weeks off the bike. I told you guys after Tour of Romandy that I was kind of surprised that he started Tour of Romandy. He won the individual time trial afterwards, but he got dropped on all the mountain stages. And I specifically said that he has to take some time off the bike at this moment in order to get himself ready for Dauphiné and the Tour de France. Now, I don't know what the kid did after Romandy, but I believe he said something about taking some rest. So if he did take some rest, but he took 3, 4, 5 days easy, then maybe he needed 2 weeks easy. It would have been better at Liège-Bastogne-Liège to have cut the season right there, get rid of Romandy, take a 2-week off, start to recover. Now, it's hard to know at Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but when you start seeing it at Dauphiné and then it happens again at the Tour de France and it's followed up with his own Instagram post of saying, well, I can't pinpoint the reason, and then later we go 4 days into the 24th and we start seeing another Instagram post where he's talking about, well, he had a sinus infection shortly afterwards. Then he's talking about the crash that he had at the Belgium Road Championships, possibly being an issue with the ribs, and basically just giving fatigue, and even saying in his Instagram post of that he was never able to continuously put together a training session between Dauphiné and the Tour de France, which tells you that after Dauphiné, if he was that fatigued after Dauphiné that you can't put together a solid block of training, the Tour de France is in huge jeopardy at that moment if you're a rider that's not feeling fantastic. Before the Tour de France, especially after Dauphiné and just before the Tour de France, you have to be going into training days where you're finishing a 6-hour training ride and a hard 6-hour training ride, and you're looking around wondering, like, what's next? What do I got to do next? I'm not even tired from that 6 hours. I am ready to go. Instead, later we see the Instagram post from Remco saying that he was never able to put in a real session of training before the Tour de France started. Right then, the lights are flashing red all over the place that possibly Pseudo Quickstep should take their main guy out of the Tour de France. Now, I know it's too hard to do, to take a rider like Remco Evenepoel that you're paying that kind of money and that you've built the team around multiple riders. We're talking about 5 extra riders coming to the Tour de France to support Remco Evenepoel, and then you're talking about the sprinter, Tim Miller, and his lead-out guy, Bert van Leerburg. So you're talking 5 guys set up just to come to the Tour de France for Remco Evenepoel. But if you're coming in and you're looking at a rider that's fatigued, that can't put together, his words, not mine. I don't know how his training's going. But when we look at his Instagram post and he says, I wasn't able to put together training, and I personally can tell you, before the Tour de France, you better be able to put in a 6-hour training ride, flip that power meter over to the couch where your wife's sitting and say, look at those power numbers, they're fantastic, I'm ready to go, and I can do this tomorrow. If you cannot follow up training ride after training ride of hard training before the Tour de France starts, the 3 weeks before, something is wrong if you're a rider like Remco Evenepoel. So when he's putting out Instagram posts saying he can't pinpoint it, it could be the crash, it could be the sinus infection, it could be this, it could be that, it could be here, it could be there, and you don't know, the best thing any rider can do is shut it down for a couple weeks. Now we look at Remco Evenepoel where he was supposed to do Classica San Sebastian. Remember, he owns the victories at Classica San Sebastian. Remco Evenepoel has dominated that race. So if the Belgium kid erased that off his calendar, that he must still be feeling something wrong. Hopefully he has taken these last 2 weeks off since stage 14 of the Tour de France and taken them off consecutively days in a row and just rested on the couch. Keep thin, keep small activities but not riding the bike, and then start the training again, and we may be able to see Remco Evenepoel ready, of course, for the World Time Trial Championships and then the World Road Race that's set up here when we're talking about 64 days from the time of stage 14 Tour de France to the start of the World's Individual Time Trial Championship. So he could be ready to go for the individual time trial, but it's going to be a little bit different course, and you got to understand that, well, where's Tadej Pogacar going to be at with his form too? But at this moment, we know for sure that Remco Evenepoel has shown that with a little bit of rest, he can come in for short days, but he can't do back-to-back consecutive days, just like we saw at the Classics after Flèche and Liège where he blew up, couldn't continue at Romandy. Dauphiné, same scenario happened at stage 6 where he started to blow up, came into the Tour de France. He was able to hold it together and hide the hidden fatigue that he had in his legs because they were easier flat stages for the first 10 days of the Tour de France. The individual time trial coming on stage 5 that he won made it hide all the damage that was happening inside the body that he tells us later that he was feeling at the Tour de France, but just wasn't letting us know. So once we go into stage 12, where we saw the Belgian kid from Soudal Quickstep blow up 50 kilometers from the finish. So we're talking about 50 kilometers from the finish, and they have to go up Oudecamp. Now, Remco Evenepoel did a spectacular job of salvaging that stage 12, and realistically, when he all said and done, he only lost about a minute and little over a minute to Jonas Vingegaard. He was 3:35, if I remember correctly, to Tadej Pogacar. Jonas was like 2:10. So we're only talking about a minute and 20 seconds to Jonas Vingegaard, which shows us what? Shows us Jonas Vingegaard went really bad on that stage 12 too, because Remco was dropped 50 kilometers to go. Of course, he had the help of Ilan van Wilder, and he had Max Schachmann that was in that big group of 31 that came back and set some tempo for him. And then Remco Evenepoel was able to ride steady. But riding steady and riding max effort is a big-time difference on the body when all of a sudden the warning signs are going off all over the place. Red alert, red alert. As a top rider, you can go steady, but doing the big efforts is what causes that body to go into damage. Now, we saw later, individual time trial, stage 13. He got passed by Jonas Vingegaard. Stage 14, as I already said, he dropped out of the Tour de France. Do I agree with him dropping out of the Tour de France? I absolutely 100% agree with any rider of his caliber and any rider of any caliber when they're feeling the sensations the way Remco Evenepoel was having. You got at that time just call it, because if you're feeling good one moment, but then big efforts all of a sudden drop the battery, you have a dead battery. Sometimes if you're in your car, the best way I can explain it to Remco Evenepoel is that when you're having car problems with your battery, you could have it where it looks full, it looks like it's ready to go, and then it needs big power, and what happens to the battery? Bam, it drops. It drops significantly. A battery should only ever, no matter how much power you use it, should only ever just drop a little bit at a time, especially the human battery. Should just click, 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 click. And of course, a huge effort might have it go a little bit faster, but it should never go from full down to zero. If something happens like that, you got a dead battery. So Remco Evenepoel, you have a dead battery. There's no doubt about that. And the only way to fix it is to replace it, but you can't replace a dead battery in the human body. So all you can do is rest and hopefully repair it that way to bring it back up to full again, but it has to be 100%. It can't be a fake charge. So when we look at the 25 Tour de France, we know Jonas underperformed. We know Primož Roglič crashed. Remco Evenepoel was never fully ready for the 24 Tour de France. Hopefully he can get himself ready for the individual men's world time trial championships coming up. But he's running out of days, because when we look at the calendar, well, we know it's only 49, 50 days to the individual world time trial championships. But that is enough time for a rider like Remco Evenepoel, if he took the 2 weeks off, to come back. So hopefully we see him good. But that explains the 25 Tour de France on why Tadej Pogacar was so dominant throughout the 2025 edition, and why the three other main first page riders just did not perform. Hope you guys like the take up here on Beyond the Coverage. I'll see you guys real soon. And don't forget to give a shout out to Molly, who was a helping hand in one way or another. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the next edition real soon.